Well, it's a perfectly reasonable effort to make. There is a tremendous amount of waste in China, and indeed all around the world. About 1/3 of food worldwide gets wasted, and that's the number in China as well. And of course, if you waste 1/3 of your food, you're also wasting the water that went into it, the labor. So it's an austerity campaign that makes sense, but it's also an austerity campaign of a sort that young Chinese haven't seen, and it's not clear that they are going to respond very positively. They've grown up in a land of plenty, and they love to eat. So this may resonate with some of the older folks who remember previous austerity campaigns, but I am doubtful that young Chinese will embrace it in the way that Xi Jinping would like.
Do you think it's an easier sell to that generation if, in fact, the government pitches it as part of a self-sufficiency pivot, that they don't want to be reliant on imports coming from countries where, let's be honest, in many cases, relations have been deteriorating?
Right. So there's the self-security side. They don't know if they can count on American supplies or Australian supplies or even, for that matter, Brazilian supplies, because Chinese-Brazilian relations have been rocky as well. So there's self-sufficiency. But this also jives pretty well with Xi Jinping's ongoing anti-corruption campaign. And in the earlier phase of that, he put forward slogans about only having a few dishes and one soup at every meal. And it also goes along with his current dual circulation economic campaign of increased self-reliance. And so there's an appeal to nationalism as well as to self-defense in this, and that maybe it's time to tighten your belts as well as cleaning your plates.
They go together, don't they? I also wonder, given that buffets have fallen out of fashion in the COVID era, whether that's helping food waste. But Robert, I'm also curious in your thoughts on what public perception is in China about this idea of looking more inward and perhaps even decoupling, because we keep hearing from the U.S. administration, from President Trump, that is, about his optimistic outlook that decoupling wouldn't be so bad. What's the impression overall in China, do you think?
Well, I think that in China they actually do the math and look at the real cost of decoupling, which would be high for China and for the United States, and indeed for the rest of the world, as China points out. So they've been clear quite right along, the Beijing government, that they don't welcome any of this talk of decoupling, but they're also not going to back down in the face of it. Despite this talk, it really hasn't happened yet in many sectors. In fact, in July, our trade deficit, the U.S. trade deficit with China, was higher than when Donald Trump started speaking about tariffs to knock down the trade deficit. American companies continue to invest extensively in China. And so you can't just look at the rhetoric. You need to look at the numbers. That said, there is a real danger of China and much of the rest of the world evolving separate financial systems for things like payments of international debts and payments for trade, and evolving separate technological systems. And if that happens, if you have mutually exclusive financial, economic, as well as technological and digital systems, then you really will be talking about decoupling and China going it alone to a considerable degree.